And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Record of Swordforged Worlds, a unofficial Sword World podcast. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4 good brothers and sisters. Ha 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 ha! We have the man who is but a letter, good brother A.
I am living off of cigarettes and Red Bull at the moment.
Oh, hopefully not at the same time. That would probably taste awful.
You know, Monk. It's like at first it was bad, but then it kind of just grows on you, kind of like a toxic relationship.
There's a joke I could make, but I'm not going to.
Just like my ex.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one.
Me either.
And we have the man losing arguments with himself.
That's funny. Because my ex didn't either.
Oh, wow. Damn.
All right, I did set that one up.
Yep, and the one who is the sideshow Bob for this morning. Probably.
Hello, I am Hydra. I am not Alfarius.
Probably
That's
also
exactly
wearing
what Alfarius would say.
Probably also wearing a shirt that says "The Bart the."
Oh, goodness.
We have the master of the Wanderer's Library and recent finisher of his first full campaign with my game, good brother Sig.
And what a good time it was. Hell of a finale.
And hey, I didn't have a character who had to get outfitted for a dress. Akitek will remember this.
Of course she will, because she's still around.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and of course, our resident sheep, good sister Maki.
Hi. I am Maki. I love women. I am once again the diversity hire of this evening. Shakes anime boobs. Viewers come in.
Wait, does that mean you also get cream pies, Monkey?
Phrasing.
Always.
I'm going to avert my eyes and kind of glance to the side respectively.
Your restraint is appreciated. But we are back once again with another episode. So the one we had last week, Refine of 2d6, Part 2. That was the end of the initial planning that I had. Now, originally the idea was always start broad and narrow down. Originally, I was going to focus on individual source books that were parallel to each other between 2.0 and 2.5. However, I quickly realized the ones that were parallel enough, there's not a whole lot to pick from. And really, the main one was things like Wizard's Tome in 2.0 and Magus Arts in 2.5, and even that's not completely accurate. So instead I decided, you know what? We're just going to cover individual books going forward. This is going to be a lot of them, and it's going to take us a year to go through it, assuming that there aren't further books, which I know that there are in the pipeline. Oh. But the release...
There are in fact further books.
The there are a few things that we're not going to be covering. And this is going to be happening in a format not too dissimilar to the way I used to do things for the Valley of the Judge before I did my VTuber debut, where it was usually a static image that would be talking about. Now, over the last couple years, when I've done Valley of the Judge, and hello there, Huitzil, how you doing today? Oh, I need to get you on the show one of these days. I have had a PDF of what is present, and that is something I may consider doing early on over the coming weeks. But when we get to later on with the 2.5 era, that is something I'm going to be shifting away from. And a big reason I'm shifting away from that is respect. Because due to the at some point incoming official translation for the DX version of 2.5, a lot of the future 2.5 translations are going to be under embargo. The setup that I have is we can certainly talk about them, we just can't show any of the embargoed material, which a lot of them have a preview of the first few pages, so you know, the color pages. So it's not as much of a deal breaker, but when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. Now, furthermore, Sword World from 2.0 onward, there has been a rotating release schedule for the most part. I think it's been messed around with a little bit here and there, but it tends to work like this: supplement, campaign, replay. Usually in a rotating setup. Now, there were some cases where they didn't exactly stick to that in the timeline, but that's neither here nor there. I went back and looked at the release order, which thankfully is provided in a couple nice, handy graphics. Sig had helped out a bit with this, but when we're going to be covering an alternating approach between supplements and campaigns.
Yep.
I'm going to... Now, normally, I've put campaigns as something I don't cover. The reason I'm covering campaigns for this is because each of the major campaigns, the ones that have their own book, have their own unique mechanics that are tied specifically to them, which I think does warrant things. The only things we won't be covering, kind of, are the replays. Now, don't get me wrong, the replays are great. I certainly enjoy the absurdity of ones like Fairy Force or Rock and Roll, spelled R-O-L-E, because somebody decided to be cheeky. I guarantee it was Beth. It was probably Beth Yuli Kurosaki being cheeky again. The guy likes wearing a Dragonborn helmet. He's...
May I?
Go ahead.
For a Japanese pure concept. A lot of folk have been actually enjoying 2.5 in some ways more than they did 2.0. And also, can I mention something? But the translation of Sword World was announced and literally nobody is talking about it ever, and there seems to be little to no news. The translation coverage literally went for milk. And never returned.
It has been frustrating. And I think I spoke with you about this a while back, where I said, you know, maybe Mugen Gaming should be giving me a paycheck for marketing. Oh. But when I originally started the Record of Swordforged Worlds, the idea was I was going to wrap it up right around the time of the backer kit launch for Sword World. Then about 3 weeks before the backer kit was supposed to launch, they announced, "Oh, we're delaying things because we jumped the gun." That's what they said. I have a feeling it was more than that, but I'm not. But that's speculation on my part, and it's not something I want to talk about publicly. Oh, but because of that, I decided, you know what? Fuck it. We're just going to go all in. We're just going to go all in. And
Sometimes fuck it is the best approach.
yeah, the approach that
That's my other ex said.
My grandpa said the same thing too.
I'm pretty sure we got plenty of ancestors who said the same thing.
Jeez. Okay, at this point, I have to wonder if you have more X's than Sailor Jupiter.
No comment.
And I'm just going to be quiet.
Twitch, clip that.
That reminds me of harassing all my friends with that new command.
But
It's very inconsistent though, so you may have to say it again or have somebody manually do it later.
it again. Nope. It looks like it caught it on the feed. So we'll see. Oh. If not, I can do it the old-fashioned way. But that was the initial plan. Unfortunately, plans change. Now, things like replays and novels, there's certainly a handful that I have. Oh. I especially like throwing Fairy Force into people whenever they debate about whether or not Sword World can be run in old school fashion, which honestly means absolutely nothing. And
Yeah, like what do they mean by old school?
it's a bunch of fucking grogs. Let's not beat around the bush here. Oh.
Okay.
Look, I've made it clear that I have one policy when it comes to grognards and self-described old school types. Fuck them. In the words of Fale, fuck them.
I mean, like, at least after the first date, right?
Oh. What are you talking about? I leave them with the bill. Thank you, Wheat Silver, clipping it.
Very nice.
But when I realized that I was going to do the whole individual basis, I realized, okay, this is going to be somewhat similar to what I do on Thursdays and Fridays with the Valley of the Judge, and more recently, Mondays on occasion. For those of you who don't watch The Valley, that is a segmented deep dive series on various TTRPG core books. It is something I do with a rotating cast on Thursdays and Fridays, covering different games. Currently, on Thursdays, we're covering Shadowscar with Sizer, and on Fridays, we're covering Augusta Universalis with Monarch. And occasionally there have been impromptu ones, like last Wednesday when Sig and I covered Fabula Ultima, and I wasn't as angry as I thought I'd be, but I was disappointed.
Yeah, I do say we should have had a little fun with it and looked at the monster designs, because there are some bangers in there. It's too bad the game itself is so poorly designed.
Poorly designed and egotistically designed.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was one of our big takeaways. But that's, if you want the full details on that, go watch the previous videos, especially the recorded videos I did beforehand. Like, the story is not yours, because I wanted to be cheeky and reference the not parentheses thing that the rebuild of Ava movies were doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least for the first two. But that kind of format is something we'll be doing similar. And instead of doing my usual grading metric, it'll be graded on how essential a given expansion is. So it's not really going to be... I don't do numeric grading metrics. I haven't in almost 15 years now. And instead go with a tier-based system that I've talked about in the past. Which, by the way, if somebody asked me to put Sword World on the tier list, the way I'd go is 2.0 is recommended, 2.5 is strongly recommended. I kind of hinted at this in the early run of this podcast, but anniversary notwithstanding, I think a 2.5 edition of Sword World was inevitable. Because the way things were kind of going, it was starting to tilt on its own weight, because with a lot of archetypes and a lot of things, you had essentially two versions of the thing, depending on which expansions you had. And I think a case in point with this is the fact that almost every one of the spellcasting classes had almost a basic and advanced version of themselves. And with a lot of stuff adding onto it, there was starting to be a bit of I don't want to say power creep, but certainly scope creep. So that's why I say it was inevitable, in the same way that I had said 3.5 for D&D was inevitable, because it kind of needed a reset. Things were built on shaky foundation. I'm not knocking Kitazawa or any of his team over it. It's more of learning how things were developing in real time, especially given how much of it was a fresh start, which was the intent. But for the coming episodes, we'll be covering books on an individual basis. The idea is to alternate between supplements and campaigns as best as we're able. In some cases, we'll be covering some mechanics that were in replays, but these are very specific examples, like, say, Baumgart's Castle Labyrinth or Cardia Carnival, where there's certain unique mechanics that are brought up in them in their own data section. But the books that are straight up novels or replays and not much else, aside from some character sheets, those ones aren't going to get covered, because there's, as much as I like them, and I do, from the perspective of this show, there's not a whole lot to dissect. And it would ultimately amount to a dramatic reading of the books. And even the light novels, there's still a lot to go through, to the point where we'd have to dedicate several episodes to that. I do want to do something like that with the Lodos novels, but I'm not planning that for months.
And there's also like that legal gray area of covering content that isn't in public domain just yet.
When it comes to the worst case scenario, I'll just put it on Kick. I'll just reactivate a Kick account I haven't used in years. But there's plenty of alternatives that I could put it into. And
I guess you'll get a kick out of it.
ha.
God damn it.
I knew that was coming.
I will note, when we do this, we will start with the 2.0 books and then move into the 2.5 books. I did my absolute best to try and do these in order of release.
I sense a button there.
There are some things that were on the release calendar that do not have translations yet, such as Mist Grave, which is a sequel to Mist Castle. Oh.
That's a lot of mist.
Oh.
I mean,
fact-
like, is it like a sandcastle-sized Mist Castle, or is it a castle-sized Mist Castle? It's depending on the answer that like it's gonna be more impressive than the other one.
Mist is a castle town, and it's probably the darkest module in the entirety of Sword World 2.x. But a big reason for taking this approach is to alternate, because I do feel like I want to be as thorough as possible with this, and at the end of the day, have it that this is the most thorough breakdown and examination of Sword World on either side of the pond. I remember when I reviewed Augusta Universalis years ago, and Luca De Marini said I did a better job covering it in English than his native Italian the Italian writers did covering it in his native Italy. I'm like, I want to see if I can bring that same energy. So I already know if there's already a few people who on the other side of the pond have shared the coverage we did on Lodos Companion a while back, which I will note in advance. I did promise that when the translation for I think it was in 2018 Lodos RPG comes out, I will be covering that on this channel. You can take that to the bank, because, well, I do seem to be a prophet on certain things, and when I say something's going to happen, it usually does. Like, I said D&D doing their own virtual tabletop was going to fail, and it did.
Spectacularly.
And it's not like I have a crystal ball or anything. It's just when you know the pattern, you can predict the next move.
Mm-hmm.
Am I always right? No, but I am more than I'm not. Which is why I've ended up adopting the nickname of Negrodamus. But I can say what the books we'll be covering over the next month are going to be, over the month of August. So next week is going to be Alchemist Works. This is the book that introduced the alchemist job. And some people have a certain expectation of what they think the alchemist class is going to be. I called it job by accident because I've been talking FFLE with some people the last few days. But I've always felt the alchemist class in Sword World has a lot more in common with, say any protagonist in the Atelier series than it does with the traditional chemist or alchemist in a lot of fantasy games. I've seen some people bring up Full Metal Alchemist. I don't see it because I don't recall anyone using cards in Full Metal Alchemist.
Siren did, but that was in the 2003 one.
Mm-hmm. And I barely count that. But the week after that, we're going to be covering the Phaedon books. This is going to be one of the rare triple features. So we'll be covering the two Tour books, Tour Leos and Tour Luferia, and then the natural history of Phaedon, which I do wonder what prompted the shift from the tour style of books to the natural history style. But that's the kind of info that I don't think I'll be able to get all that easy. I mean, it's possible the tour books didn't do quite as well, since Leos and Luferi are only focused on...
You have me. Let me explain.
Mhm.
The general consensus that has spawned from the initial series was the people didn't want to be guided into the world as much as they wanted to be given tools to use.
Mhm. I could certainly see that, and
Which is what prompted the shift from a guided tour
yeah, there's going to
to
be
a
some...
more wide, broad definition of a history book.
Mhm. I could see that, since, and we will cover this in a few weeks, there's a good chunk of the tour books that are travelogues. And there was one book that was nothing but travelogues, Our Travels in Alframe. That book, which, because it's mostly travelogue, there's not a whole lot we're going to be covering on that. But the times that I did put multiple books in one episode for the coming schedule were because those were books that tackled a specific region. Or tackled a particular theme. For example, Mist Castle and Fairy Garden will be covering in the same week. That will hopefully be on August 16th, which is just a few days after my birthday. And the main reason I'm doing that, even though tonally they don't have anything in common, but structurally they are very similar in terms of being a grid crawl in a particular region, with time being your enemy. So I felt they were similar enough that they could be covered in one batch. I'd say another. In some cases, there are some one-off scenarios or add-ons that were specifically in magazines like GM Warlock that have been translated, that I folded into other parts. One example is in September we'll be covering Wizard's Tome, as well as the Invitation of the Magic Sword article, which goes into creating magic swords. And given the big deal that magic swords have in the setting, I figured that's something worth covering.
Ooh, yes.
But also another example of this is in November, where Procelsia: A Secret History and Dragon Raid will be covered in one episode. The main reason I did that is both of them take place in the same region, so I didn't feel like spreading that out across two episodes. Plus, I have heard things regarding Dragon Raid. It was certainly a bold experiment to do, but I've heard that it didn't exactly go as planned. The main thing that I have for Dragon Raid is the compilation book. I don't know how well the Dragon Raid experiment did, and I have a bit of perspective on it because the way it's described, it's not far removed from the infamous Storm of Chaos event with Warhammer Fantasy. I think you remember that one, eh? Or the Kotai events for Legend of the Five Rings. You know, those store events that were meant to be a big part of the story. And A is currently muted, but the short version of Storm of Chaos was it was an event with Warhammer Fantasy Battle that was supposed to do this big chaos invasion that was going to be that was trying to blitzkrieg its way into getting to the capital of the empire. The idea was people could send their battle reports and have an impact on how the overall campaign went. The problem was there was no quality control. So people would just send results of, oh, this army that I like won. Then Games Workshop ended up forcing the thing anyways because Chaos kept losing. Only to have it revealed at the end that Archaon lost because he got suddenly punted in the balls by an orc, and that was the end of that. I like to think that generated a bit of salt in Games Workshop, which led to the end times, and we will not talk about that. But there are 1.0 book that I didn't put on here is the Raxia God book. Oh, he had said 8 BRB. Oh, okay.
I'm back. I had to go put out a fire at work.
I had given them the skinny about the Storm of Chaos event because I was seeing some parallels between that and what the Dragon Raid event appears to be.
Did you talk about how? Did you talk about how the big bad evil guy got defeated by getting kicked in the balls by an orc?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think Games Workshop was salty that Chaos kept losing, but
I mean, it's one of those things where, especially at the time, because granted, there's no quality control, and two, it's like the writers want, it's hard to, the writers obviously want to have Chaos be the big bad evil guy, obviously, but since it's all dependent on the factions that people like to play, spoiler alert, most people don't like playing the big bad evil guys.
Mm-hmm.
Probably doesn't help that at the time, Chaos wasn't exactly the most powerful army either.
Mm-hmm.
But I also brought up the Kotai events with the Legend of the Five Rings card game, which I think that's one of the better ways of doing this kind of thing because there was a lot of quality control on it, and a lot of players got in character when it came to whichever clan they favored. You know, such as anyone running a Scorpion deck always wore a mask.
Wasn't that also the same event that ended up having to ad-lib the ending?
Not really, because it was a seasonal event.
Oh, it was that one. Okay.
It was a seasonal tournament that they would break out every few months that determined the next direction that they'd take the fiction. The idea was they would do the event, look at the results, and then write the fiction. The worst that happened was just them being accused of later on overly favoring the Mantis clan. Some people calling them Alderak's waifu.
I never got into the trading card side of Legends of the Five Rings, so I don't quite know the drama behind that.
The drama wasn't
other than the obvious implications.
Around the time the 3rd edition RPG came about, so Diamond Edition in the card game, I believe, there was a big push for the Mantis clan because they were during the clan war, they were an alliance of minor clans, and after the Second Day of Thunder, they got elevated to great clan status. And the point is that these kind of events where where the story is being shaped by the tournament scene, they can work, but you need to have a significant amount of control. And I can see how they can be a fun thing to explore as well. But in addition to that, the Roxia God book is one that I decided, you know what, we're not gonna cover that. The majority of that book, even though it's pretty insightful on the lore of the gods, and it's the closest thing that we have to a book solely around the divine civilization, a lot of it is short stories. And that's not really something I can build an episode around. Same reason that the novels aren't going to be covered, or the replays. It's an issue of what can we actually dissect, and what would just be us doing a dramatic reading. I do know that there is, and we won't be getting it until the fall, but I do know that there is a book that is going to be dedicated to the Magitech civilization, which that is something I'm excited for because we haven't had that for the longest time.
I like the cover of that, just being somebody with an obvious like impure like a 40k chainsword.
That's not the book I'm talking about.
Oh.
The one I'm talking about only got announced. We don't even have a cover yet.
Okay.
Though it is part of a trilogy of books that were Magitech themed.
Magitech could use some attention, especially that area of the history.
Oh. Pretty much. And admittedly with some of the other, there's not going to be a whole lot of multi-book episodes. I only did that when I felt I absolutely had to. And like the things like Cardia Grace and briefly covering the changes in the revised version of the core books is another example. Or slipping in slipping in the work downtime activities that were introduced in the Cardia Carnival replay. But it, as well as things like Barbarous Rage and Barbarous Saga being covered in the same go because, well, obvious reasons. And the books, the Vasego and At the City Where Magitech Reigns would be covered in one go because, one, they're both Magitech focused books, and two, they take place in the same region. There was also the books Abyss Breaker and Those Who Cross the Abyss. Those are going to be covered in one episode because it's the same theme of shallow abysses. And things like Epic Treasury and Character Building book, I couldn't justify splitting them into their own episodes. So I decided, you know what, they're gonna be they're gonna be ones that we cover in one go. And I was doing a lot of idea bouncing on this with Sig when this was getting set up, and trying my best to come up with a cute name that wasn't just reviewing this book. Like the title for next week is going to be The Great-ish Work. which is an alchemy joke and also a play off of what Magnus Opus means, or Magnum Opus, I should say. But and I was tempted to see if I'd cover any homebrew, but with how packed the schedule is, I don't think I could find a way to squeeze it in. Although there are some interesting ones, like that Bubble World that Aquid made, that is a bit of a nod/piss take on gacha mechanics. But I think now when I did point out the list, yes, there's a lot. It will probably take us a year to get through all of it. But I think at the end of the day, we will be able to have the boasting part of having the most thorough coverage of Sword World probably on the damn planet.
I mean, if we could get guided by Kara's attention, we know we hit the jackpot.
Well, remember the playlist where all the episodes are on is also has a link to it on Guided by Cardia's channel page. And if by some miracle I end up getting in communication with Mugen Gaming, I guess I can put that feather in our collective cap. But all that being said, this was the setup for the for one final bit of cleanup we have to do before we can truly move forward into the, I was going to call it new era, but seeing how many times era gets used by Paul Levesque, I have no desire to do that. Because I like watching wrestling events that have more than 4 fucking matches over the course of 3 hours.
I mean, could it even be called a wrestling event if it's only 4, or is that just a normal episode?
I'll give you the context later. But with that said, we're going to take a bit of a 7th inning stretch, as it were, because baseball unifies us all across the ocean. And when we come back, we will be delving into something that I've dreaded, but I also promised that I would cover at some point. Because it'll be time once again, and the last time, to give William a roasting.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Doku, scooch over. We're going to be ready in the barn now.
Yes.
So, get your drinks ready. We will see you in a few. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and good lord, have I been dreading this. I knew about this
We all
video
have.
when it originally released. Apparently, we're covering a re-release, which means I'm probably not the only one who ended up giving him shit. The only thing I know about this video ahead of time, and only because Aquid told me, is he screwed up Fellows. But
grew up with such a simple system.
Well, we're talking about a guy that couldn't be bothered to read the Anima core book.
yeah, we may as well rip that band-aid off first, because this is not our first rodeo with William SRD this month. So, since you ended up taking since you ended up giving the bulk of the barbs, would you mind going through the skinny as to why we had so many problems with his coverage of Anima?
Ah, God, where to begin? He spent most of the time ensuring that the audience knows that he's a card-carrying member of r/atheists. He's the Dollar General brand Berkey. I know there's a bunch more. Oh yeah, he structures that video very oddly. That's one of the things I feel like in hindsight that definitely soured us, because I understand what he was trying to do.
But she went on and on about the Imperium of Abel and the Inquisition and the Church, while
just the church.
Just the church, and while barely hiding which faction he was rooting for.
Mm-hmm.
Which faction he was rooting for? The fact that he insisted that it was doing the no. He wanted a no good guy. He's claiming no good guys, but also it's clear he's simping for El Hajred.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're going to simp, at least follow Pancreas Snow's works approach and declare that you're simp for X.
Yeah. There was also the fact that several factions just got completely ignored. I think he had this idea of wanting to present the church as backwards individuals. Despite the fact that, given some of the shit that was out there before the War of God, the church having the attitude they do about supernatural life kinda has a point. Unless you're one of the people who would try and say that there's nothing wrong with having Omega out in the world, which I don't think you'd want that.
No, that would in fact be quite bad.
Mm-hmm. And it's important to remember that Omega is just one potential world-ending threat. Same thing with Ergo Mundus. As powerful as he is, he's just one thing of many that is that level of power.
Yeah. There's no shortage of a walking apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that a lot of that he did not cover in the name of making jokes really put him on my bad side. Just from the title, I was yelling. And when it comes to this title, we haven't even started, even though we've got an hour to go through. Although we probably won't go through the full hour. And already I'm annoyed. The game that beat D&D in Japan. That is fucking wrong.
I'll ready the seppuku knife.
Hold on, I'm cracking a bottle open right now.
So,
please crack it over my head.
Now, obviously,
I'm not trying to kill you, Sig.
Obviously, the information that I have is limited on the matter, but one of the big reasons Japan has had D&D does not have as big of a foothold in Japan as it has in other countries has to do with a couple things. One of them is how slow it was getting there, and another is the stop and start support. From what I had been told, there would be these periods of a few years where D&D would get supported in Japanese, and then several years where it wouldn't, almost a every 5 years kind of thing. Now some of that was due to TSR going bankrupt, but even in the WotC era, that still ended up happening. I know that for a while, the Japanese distribution was handled by Hobby Japan until Wizards of the Coast decided to do it themselves. And some of the people I've talked to have been frustrated that a bunch of stuff still hasn't come to the shores.
I mean, after all this time, it would just be quicker to just make
Even
your own
me,
system.
the Japanese, can say that Dungeons and Dragons have defeated Dungeons and Dragons in Japan.
One of the big things I can say on the matter is, for the longest time, and feel free to correct me on this, Maki, the main thing that was translated into Japanese was the red box. The Bekmi era red box in the 1980s. Over here in the States, by the time we get to that point in time, we're already in AD&D 2nd edition territory. At the very least, we're in advanced territory. I think AD&D 2nd edition didn't hit until around 85-ish. But there's the translation for advanced D&D was a long and expensive process that took years. And by the time it finally dropped, a bunch of other games had already gotten to Japan and established a foothold. Games like basic role-playing, or the step system used in Earth Dawn. Or I'd say if there's one company that really established a very strong foothold in Japan, it was FASA. Through both BattleTech, Shadowrun, and Earth Dawn. And I also am aware that companies like Atelier Third had handled the translation of World of Darkness. And of course, Traveler and basic role playing had established footholds very early on. I think there was even one GURPS book that was exclusive to Japan. This was very early GURPS, and it's not compatible with modern GURPS, but still, the point is that by the time things started to stabilize with Japanese D&D, it wasn't the top dog in the room. It was just one of them. And I also think during the TSR years, you had the issue of all the tumult handling that was happening stateside with TSR. Whether it be the Bloom brothers fucking up everything, the hell of trying to get the TV series and also the movie off the ground. The original movie is not the movie that we saw years later. And also, hi there, Mario. Weeks only just started, so it's technically going good. And there was also Lorraine Williams. There's a lot that can be said about Lorraine Williams. For the interest of time, I will state that she is a great model of equality, because she showed that female executives can be just as incompetent as male ones. Like, seriously, banning game playing on company grounds when you're running a game company. I realize how insane that sounds, but that is something she did.
But Monk, you can't have the programmers actually play games on company time. You gotta do things like make sure the code is compiled correctly.
We're not talking about the computer games. That was SSI.
Oh.
Like, she didn't allow anybody to test the tabletop games, the thing that was their moneymaker on company grounds.
That's like putting the cart before the horse.
Just to play devil's advocate, like, you could make the argument of going and having like a dice calculator to see percentages could potentially help, but yeah, it's still stupid.
Actually, this is Japan. They could probably do the math inside their head.
A lot of playtesting is heavily dependent on context, so a dice calculator is not going to do you as much good as people would think. This is also why statistical analysis of die results is kind of boring in the grand scheme of things. It doesn't really... It's not something where the juice is worth the squeeze. And a statistician did look at multiple die resolution systems, and it concluded that none of them had a statistically significant advantage over the other. But the point is that with William, he prioritizes being an entertainer versus informing, but at the same time structures his work as informational. And this will be the last chance I give him, because I guarantee you this: I am never covering any of his videos again after this.
That's fair.
Oh, and as a final thing, when it comes to Lorraine Williams, even the other executives hated her.
How did she get the job then?
Because the Bloom brothers sold their stock to her when they got booted, because they almost bankrupted TSR years before it actually went bankrupt. She was also responsible for the Buck Rogers Buck Rogers in the 25th Century RPG that no one asked for. Because who the hell was asking for a Buck Rogers RPG in 1986?
Don't know.
But anyway, I will note as well the thumbnail for this particular video had said this is why they don't play D&D in Japan, which is bullshit. It says why Japan doesn't play D&D, which is still bullshit. And what's equally annoying is the image that you see right now in front of you. That is from the Japanese version of the Rules Cyclopedia, which actually had to be split into 3 books because it was doing a smaller page size. It wasn't doing the A4 format. So it got split into 3. And I do find the art choices with the Rules Cyclopedia in Japan fascinating. I also ended up using that in my dismantling of the term JRPG, which some have asked me to take that back. I'm never taking that back. I don't take anything back. But let me pause the playlist and let us get started. I've delayed things enough.
In the 80s, over Japan, but something else got there first.
Okay, problem 1. That wasn't the case.
Of course it got there first. It was made there. It's like saying, oh, the English came to America, but then the Native Americans were here first. No shit, Sherlock.
Oh,
The
we're
red
off
bo-
to a good start.
The red box had already been out by a few years. Sword World didn't start until the late 80s. I think the first Sword World book was in 1988. And Redbox had already been out by a few years. And it had to be because Redbox was, even though Ryo Mizuno was running Advanced, Redbox was what they were using for the Lodos replays. That was a decision that his higher ups had suggested because AD&D wasn't available in Japanese at the time. How Lodos War beat D&D. We're 14 seconds in and already I'm yelling.
Don't worry, Mildred. The morale will only get worse from here.
Are we gonna have to bring out the sedatives?
As they say in certain parts of the military, it will always get worse.
It is the woe of every tabletop system in the West to be compared to and subsumed by Dungeons and Dragons. Nice tabletop campaign module you made there, Paizo. Sure would be humiliating if you were forced to port it over to D&D 5th edition, but this situation is not what it's like in Japan.
I already hate this meme. I've hated every form of this meme, and this is no exception.
Because in Japan, another franchise beat them, and D&D has never recovered. Decades they've been trying over and over again to take over the Japanese market, but it's never worked. D&D remains a name that's known in Japan, known as an influence, but not really as a game that people actually play.
And yet, I've met plenty who do.
Number one reason why it never took off can be traced back to a scrappy band of Japanese magazine editors who sat down to play a role-playing game with a freshly printed Japanese copy of the D&D basic set.
This is not the basic set. This is the
art
rule
looks
cyclopedia.
nice.
Oh, the art's great.
I
But
can
this-
make an addendum.
Also, pro tip: try not to play
Most
a
of the
drunken game.
people who you meet that play Dungeons and Dragons.
Also, please don't do a drunken game. You might die of alcohol poisoning before we're
Got
done.
introduced to Dungeons and Dragons through their online endeavors.
meaning a more recent affair, which doesn't surprise me because of the stop and start thing I mentioned before. But the Rules Cyclopedia was a late addition to first edition D&D that was meant to be this codification of a lot of the rules that were in various expansions. It was a big ass book, even in the West. But for a lot of people who were playing early D&D, from what I understand, it was mainly the red box.
As someone who was deep in tabletop games in Japan, Dungeons and Dragons was never a thing.
I could see it being a thing in the mid '80s, but I feel like a lot of people, when they look at certain anime and say this was probably D&D inspired, I have to wonder if it was more wizardry inspired than D&D directly.
It was often too cumbersome and too crunchy for people's tastes.
I think there's also the fact that, as I've talked about in the past, D&D was a descendant of chainmail. Chainmail was a descendant of the wargame scene of the 70s. And wargaming never really took off on that same level in Japan. And in fact,
Go ahead.
a lot of early tabletop publications, especially magazines, were serving double duty as computer gaming endeavors as well. And things like Lodos, the idea with Lodos Companion was take the fan base of the Lodos PC game and bring them over into tabletop.
Which isn't a bad idea. I could definitely see the reasoning behind that.
It is an amusing idea for me as somebody who's gotten no end of shit from Grogs about the idea of taking elements from video games and bringing them into tabletop.
How could they have known what they were about to accomplish? This is a re-upload of this video from last year. It was able to stay up for about a month and a half last time, during which it became quite a beloved video in my community. Then, unfortunately, Kadokawa came along and blocked the video from being seen by anyone. This is a worse version of that video where I have stripped out most of the moving video footage and replaced it with still images. If you're kind of an audio-only viewer, this video is probably perfectly acceptable. However, if you want to get into the visuals, then this video is best enjoyed on Patreon, where I have it available for free. Link in the description. Now, let's get into it. A big shout out to Masaki Yanagida's write-up on Tokyo Dev for this next section of the video. Much of this story was available on the Western Internet before Masaki's write-up, and in fact I've told a smaller version of it before as part of my coverage on the Chronicles of Mystara games. Yet, Masaki's
I respect
article
it's
gives
free
some...
on Patreon.
Yeah, I respect that it's free on a site that on a Patreon page I will not visit.
So much clarity on the beat-by-beat happenings of how Lodos War defeated D&D.
Something else I should note. It's kind of odd for Lodos to defeat D&D when Lodos started as a D&D replay in Comptique. I have a distinct feeling, and there's pattern recognition for this, that he didn't read the full article.
Of course not.
No.
Go give it a read, since this video's story and Masaki's story diverge in very different directions after a time.
Probably because his is more accurate. What was that, Abe?
Glad to see that he's telling other people to read it, because he obviously didn't.
He's following the D&D thread of the story.
I
We're
would say as
covering
much
the
as a normal consumer of tabletop game is concerned. There's not a lot of interest in classic fantasy, which is presented by Dungeons and Dragons. Even Sword World is not strictly fantasy entirely. So the attempts to bring in Dungeons and Dragons brought nothing.
There was a recent attempt that pissed me off. Because for some reason, and I found this extremely fucking patronizing, they decided to revive the old Karatur setting, make it Japan only. Putting aside the fact that I've been asking for that setting to make a comeback for years, I found the idea of saying, "Oh, we're gonna do in order to break into this market in Asia, we need to only use this setting for this part of Asia." I'm like, fuck you, fuck you, and the 6 white horses your fat ass rode in on.
I wonder, like, Monkey kind of brought this up earlier, like kind of alluded to it. I wonder if, like, the reason 5e is kind of slowly adding in a lot of modern esque weapons, like, shotguns and ARs into like the main series proper, and not just like stats in a dungeon master's guide, is to try to eventually get into more of a console-esque fantasy setting.
I did that before.
They
and
tried
better.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about Urban Arcana.
No, I just added it up myself when I still ran 5e.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, it can be done. You just have to not be stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's that. I think it's more a consequence of not having a proper series Bible when it comes to because any talented writer is not writing for Wizards of the Coast. So they have to bring in people who are less talented. Especially because they'll probably do work on the cheap. And Hasbro does not like spending money.
Nope.
Unless it's on their slot machines.
I had attempted to interest some of the kids from my tabletop club all the way back when I was in late school and then university. There's not a lot of people who got interested in cliché westernized foreigner fantasy slop. And I am quoting.
Mm-hmm.
Foreigner fantasy slop. Hold on, I gotta write that one down.
Yeah. And I know given the popularity of certain fantasy anime, this is something I'm going to come back to, because I'll bury the lead in advance. I will be revisiting the Everray Games channel, the Untold Destiny folks, next month to talk about bringing console-style RPG elements into tabletop campaigns. And a big element that I'm going to be exploring there is how there are certain habits that people in the West have had that need to be unlearned if you're going to do that. One of the big ones is unlearning, trying to do medieval realism. And Mario asks, didn't most Western influence come from military troops sharing their hobbies, and TTRPGs gained wider popularity until the 90s? No. The wargaming scene started taking off in the 70s, especially with companies like Avalon Hill. I think some of that bled over into the soldier side of thing, because the commercial war games were based on officer training war games from the late 19th century. The original Strategio one that was a Polish training thing. It's a weird case in of itself that used a spinning top.
A spinning top and an equivalent of like a game master, I believe.
Referee. Okay. The idea of a lot of early war games used a referee/judge. That's where that term got inherited by TTRPGs. Where TTRPGs really started to show up was in the historical and wargaming clubs in various colleges in the Midwest, especially Minnesota and Wisconsin, and especially, well, Lake Geneva and Highland Park. The latter of which I have more familiarity with than anyone you're gonna find. Highland Park was where Blackmore was born. And of course, Blackmore was run by Arneson. And it was one of, I think, 3 different campaigns that he was doing. One of them was a Wild West campaign that didn't go anywhere. Another was a Napoleonic campaign that did go places. But it started out as an improv that just iterated itself, which tends to be how these kind of things go. And TTRPGs remained popular in the 90s. It's just in the mid 90s, all of TSR's sins had come back to collect, which led to them going bankrupt. And this is something I pointed out when I called out Ben Riggs a few years ago. TSR going belly up didn't kill TTRPGs. Because shortly after that happens, White Wolf comes in and asserts their dominance with the World of Darkness. And other companies had filled the vacuum as well. The late 90s were a wild time when it came to TTRPGs, because even if D&D was no longer being supported, and a lot of people were taking the piss on TSR for some of their bad decisions, TTRPGs still had their popularity. So it's
didn't Shadowrun also take off at about that same time frame?
Yes.
Okay.
Pretty much everything FASA related did. And I know BattleTech was popular enough in FASA to get its own exclusive books, or at least exclusive art. Which is kind of amusing when you consider the whole Harmony Gold bullshit. But that's another story.
Lodos
Harmony Gold
story. This band of developers would go on to launch a franchise of their tabletop games, culminating in Sword World, the game that beat D&D.
Oh boy. This was the part that got Aquid so pissed he ended up making a whole video about it. There has been this narrative going about for the last few months. And I have to put both this motherfucker and even Mugen Gaming on blast for this, because they've contributed to this. There is this idea among people that Record of Lodos War was the cocoon of which the Sword World butterfly would emerge from. That is not true. Lodos was eventually folded into Sword World, but only in 1997, because the bubble had started to burst, and while the Lodos companion book wasn't doing great, Sword World was still doing all right. So the decision was made to make the Lodos World Guide. And by that point, TSR was out of the picture. But we had for the longest time a Sword World book and a Lodos book. They were meant to serve 2 different audiences. The Lodos book was meant to entice people who had played the PC games into tabletop. Sword World was made with tabletop in mind exclusively.
Kind of like what Games Workshop intended a lot of the earlier Warhammer Fantasy and 40K games, where it's like, oh hey, here's these games, and by the way, we have this entire war game over here where you're able to like paint up your own armies and fight them against your friends.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when it came to Warhammer Fantasy, idea of the miniature line came first, and then they started making a rule book.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Or it was like the other way around. My bad.
Mm-hmm. And well, Rogue Trader was meant to be an arm of some of the thinking with Warhammer Fantasy. It wasn't supposed to spin off into its own thing at first. Then again, the first 2 editions and modern 40K have barely any connective tissue.
It was like 3rd or 4th edition 40K. Like 40K was about when it became recognizable. Otherwise, it was like, best way to describe it is like I don't know how to describe the older Rogue Trader other than like just a grab bag of bunch of like sci-fi genres and IPs and thrown together.
Pretty much, as well as any writer in the UK that they could get their hands on. But this is going to be pain.
I'll drop some links to some fan translations of the game down below if you're interested in running it.
Fan translations that I guarantee he never read.
And if you do, you'll want to get some
this guy even
great and
read?
evocative tabletop assets to tell your tale. You're going to want to check out today's sponsor, Chepeku. You know, as time goes on,
like these
the
guys.
tabletop community seems to
Chepeku
take
are
more
good.
and more
Really
pride
good
in the
maps.
production quality of our games. Maps, tokens, set dressing. But these things can all add so much time to your session prep. Hours
Skill
per
issue.
game, just on trying to get your maps even a step above paper doodles. Well, to save you the trouble, Chepeku has built a brilliant package with all the polished assets you need in order to make people say, wow, that viewer guy? They run a fancy table. In the past, Chepeku offered 3 different fantasy services: maps, tokens, and scenes. But now, they're offering you their best ever deal. All 3 of those services bundled up together, cheaper than ever before. Maps, 5 of them a month, plus access to the thousands that they have already published. And yeah, some of them move. And all of them have different presets, so if you need the map to be a different season, or the site of a massacre, or a ritual, it's already built in. Chepeku scenes, 5 of them a month. Some animated, yes, and variations as well, just like the maps. These things are your backdrop on a virtual tabletop. They set the mood like it's nobody's business. Do you know how unbelievably effective it is to get your players used to a village like this one, then they return one day and it's covered in blood? Third thing, tokens, and lots of them, 40 a month. Access to all the old stuff too. And better than variations, these ones have a full-on customizer, so you can get your creatures and characters exactly the way you want them to look. I use Chepeku's services myself with my game, Dark Fantasy, DMing our current campaign, but our DM swears by Chepeku scenes. Hey, when I described the returning
I
to
do
a
like
village covered in
Chepeku's,
blood,
like,
he
sci-fi
did that,
maps they've
not
been getting
me.
into.
I said it was effective? Yeah, that's because it was effective on me. Subscribe to the complete fantasy bundle by using my link below. It's 3 subscriptions for the price of 2. Living here in the 2020s, fantasy has a tendency to feel settled. Certainly there are variants.
Settled. I feel like it's only settled if you have a limited information base, which certainly is the case with William, as we saw last time we had to cover him.
Yes.
Also, Mario says, I can hear your axe grinding from states away, Monk. Yes. Because if I use a sword, Sig is going to get mad at me.
Yeah, because you always steal mine and break them.
Stop making them breakable.
Stop collecting breakable swords.
It's not my fault you
I picked them up.
It's not my fault you collected 50 copies of Excalibur.
Hey, I had a good deal with Gilgamesh, okay?
Translation, he got screwed by Greg.
From State Farm?
And this is why I'm glad I'm a Hydra. I don't need swords.
Well, at least
Fantasy,
no one
dark
touches the
fantasy,
main
low
one that I
fantasy,
have.
and even more than that. yet a fantasy revolution that is core to our modern understanding of the genre shot through the globe over the course of the 80s and 90s. I'm talking about D&D fantasy, because Dungeons & Dragons has never really been just a game. From the beginning, it's been a movement about telling stories, and that makes it a literary movement. Once upon a time, Tolkien said, "That guy over there, that's Strider. He's one of them rangers." Well, D&D and all of the works that were inspired by it have fundamentally altered the way that we hear that line. Even people who haven't really played D&D of any sorts hear that line and they don't understand it as, "That's a woodsy guy." They hear Ranger as a class with an expected set of abilities that he will develop as he progresses through a series of adventures with a party of characters.
Do people make that assumption? Or is
No.
that I keep mentioning this a lot, but survivorship bias is a thing. Especially when you have a limited sample size.
And that's just one tiny example. D&D-based fantasy is a flavor that has been added to fantasy since it first came out and started making a splash. I say all of this to separate the D&D fantasy movement from D&D itself, because this distinction is very important when talking about Japan's relationship to tabletop games. Because the Dungeons & Dragons literary movement hit the mean streets of Tokyo long before the rulebooks did. Things influenced by Dungeons & Dragons were impressing the Japanese market in the early 1980s. CRPGs like Wizardry and Ultima introduced the concepts to Japanese geeks.
No mention of Traveler? Traveler got there first.
Well, you see, Monk, that ruins his that's gonna ruin his like the story he's trying to fabricate here.
Fuck him. The earliest one that hit Japanese stores, to my knowledge, was Traveler. Which, when you consider Traveler's history, makes perfect sense. But, and yes, Wizardry and Ultima were certainly based on fantasy runs. Though Ultima, I believe, was based more on was based less on D&D and more on the likes of fighting fantasy. And when you consider that for the majority of the Ultima games, especially the classic ones, so, Ultima 1 through 6, you're not playing with a party. You're playing as the Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And they were doubled down upon when gamebooks like The Warlock of Firetop Mountain exploded onto the scene. In 1985, a print run of the D&D basic set came out.
Why are you showing the rules cyclopedia when you're talking about the basic set?
Probably because it doesn't know the difference between the two.
Probably.
One table that purchased this set was a group of magazine contributors that would come to name themselves Group SNE. Now, in the modern day, if you're connected to the tabletop hobby at all, you've probably heard of Critical Role.
Critical Role, where a bunch of us nerdy-ass voice actors sit around and play Dungeons & Dragons, and Sam makes noise from his phone over there.
They are truly
this
a
guy?
megalith in the hobby.
Say again?
Who's this guy? Sorry, I just had to make the joke.
Yeah. Just looking at the chat for a bit, Mara's saying, "Oh god, the pretentiousness is palpable." Yeah. This is why this is the last time I'm going to be covering this guy. I think he probably used ChatGPT for his research. I won't confirm or deny that, but if he did, I'd just nod and say, yeah, that makes sense. Like, seriously, who says literary movement unironically these days?
Yeah.
I've only used the term when I've discussed things as a historian.
And unless we fair, ChatGPT probably would wind up doing a better job to explain things that he does anyway.
Probably.
It depends on the model.
And
'cause
they're
I've
a
had
big part
some
of why
models be
D&D
really
5th
brain dead.
Edition got so popular. They live stream their D&D games to an audience of millions. They play games with your favorite celebrities. They have books,
Favorite celebrities, and they bring up Stephen Colbert.
Nobody likes Colbert. People like Colbert like what? 20 years ago, whenever he was actually funny.
They liked the Colbert Report. That's it.
Yeah.
comics, they've got a goddamn animated TV show, and importantly, they also have an upcoming tabletop RPG that will likely be a major competitor to Dungeons and Dragons.
Bullshit.
I mean, hindsight's 2020. And also, let's not pretend Hasbro hasn't been like screwing itself.
Oh, I'm not.
But
Daggerheart is kinder just existing.
Daggerheart is its own beast, and trying to make any D&D comparison really doesn't work. A lot of people
I
have
don't know
done that.
anybody that. Go ahead.
A lot of people who have done that have done so with very surface level info. Daggerheart has more in common with Earthdawn than it does D&D. Hell, it has more in common with Fantasycraft than it does D&D. I think people thought that because Critical Role. And despite what certain idiots have said, I don't think Daggerheart's success is entirely because of the Critical Role Association, because the only member of that team who has any major involvement with it was Travis Willingham. He was the one who was on the ground floor at conventions, hyping the game up. And to be fair, Travis is a very good hype man.
Yeah.
When he isn't being a menace to Laura, or everybody at the table with his antics.
I mean, you always got to have one person in the group being the clip farmer.
Usually that's me. But anyway, the point is, I think a lot of people during the OGL fiasco were thinking that Daggerheart was going to be this D&D killer, but they never said that. Hell, none of the people who made response games said that. They said the OGL thing had shaken things up, and we wanted to do our own thing. Saying that Daggerheart is trying to be a major competitor is like saying AEW is trying to be a major competitor to WWE.
I think that was just a majority response to the OGL. People just wanted to make their own stuff.
Pretty much.
Not
a lot of
D&D.
And it has gotten to the point where we're starting to see people make third-party stuff for Daggerheart. A couple of them I've covered on the show. Whether it be the Cthulhu 1916 project or the Demon Heart project,
which I've backed.
Mm-hmm.
Because Demon's kind of my thing.
Wait, hang on. No, it's upcoming for me right now as I'm saying this. For you guys, it came out last week.
Time is important, and I am even though I know that exists.
Say again?
I don't know anybody out of my circle that even knows Daggerheart exists. So people saying it being big is kind of a
big is size is relative when there's not a reliable metric to use. Like there isn't say a tabletop equivalent of Steam charts. So how big or not big something is always going to be unreliable.
If all of this sounds familiar, it's because all of this has already happened before, decades ago. Group SNE began making their games public, not as a live stream like Critical Role does. I mean, it's the mid-1980s, that's absolutely not a thing they can do. Group SNE instead transcribed their tabletop sessions and printed them out as what they call replays. It's not quite releasing just the raw transcript, but it's also not quite a short story either. A replay is somewhere in between. Anyway, Group SNE's project became titled Record of Lodos War, and it ended up with a readership in the tens of thousands as part of Comtique magazine. Here's where D&D really shot themselves in the foot in this story. In the modern day, D&D chose to partner up with Critical Role to get people playing 5th edition at a truly unprecedented rate. Well, they knew that that was the play because they had past experience utterly destroying their potential relationship with the Japanese public by
Is he trying to put some sort of continuity link between Wizards of the Coast and TSR? I think he is. That's stupid.
By just being impossible for early tabletop fans to work with. SNE was working hard to create a small guide titled A Book That Makes D&D Easy to Understand. They were trying to release it to Japan to get people to play along with their games, and it took like 2 bloody years of back and forth with TSR before they finally got the green light. D&D was really starting to take off in Japan, in large part due to the popularity of Lodos War, but also other systems and replays. There's a sort of ever-repeating tragedy in D&D's history. Because D&D is sort of this folk tradition in a way, it gets passed down by word of mouth, but there's also like this company attached to it that wants a cut of everything, and they'll say no to almost everything you try to produce with these kind of folk practices. Case in point, Group SNE asked to publish their transcripts into a novel collection as an official D&D project. To which TSR, the company that owned D&D at the time, said, and I quote directly, "How do I tell them to fuck off in Japanese?" Not one to take this lying down.
Not exactly. The plan was to make a D&D campaign setting for Lodos. Or let me reverse that. The idea was to make a Lodos campaign setting book. You know, not something not far removed from, say, Dark Sun or Planescape or Oriental Adventures, yada yada yada. As far as why things broke down, it depends on who you ask. Some people say TSR never returned their calls. Some say the language barrier was a problem. And some say TSR was just straight up belligerent. Honestly, I think it's a combination of all three.
Ryo Mizuno, the dungeon master of the game, took their D&D transcripts and outright wrote them into a fantasy novel. It is, in fact, one of the first ever Japanese high fantasy novels.
Oh. I said, I have grown to absolutely loathe the term tropes in narrative discussions. Now, I'm not gonna go into novel history, but from what I recall at the time, I'm pretty sure, by the time that whole thing with Lodos happened, the Grey Witch PC game was already out. Also, it's kind of funny that he's talking about the novel when he's using the cover of the manga.
You know, he probably just Googled Lotus War book cover and just found that one. It's like, hey, good enough.
It would have been more embarrassing if he used the anniversary covers, which actually are pretty good.
I need you to understand just how influential
I would have understood that if it was good enough.
Series is. This novel is ground zero for every Western fantasy thing you see in Japan, even in the modern day. Hell, it's kind of an open point of discussion for those in the know that Frieren, the anime elf who has taken the internet by storm, is pretty clearly inspired by Deedlit, the elf from Lodos War. And if not explicitly by Deedlit, then she's at least inspired by the tropes that Deedlit pioneered.
There's something very slimy about that phrasing. As if to say, yeah, I may be wrong, but I'm going to try and make myself right in a way that's not
I don't
able
think
to.
it's technically incorrect.
I don't think it's technically incorrect. I just don't like the way it's phrased. It comes off as a Mott and Bailey.
Anyway, inventing Japanese high fantasy aside, Group SNE continued landing knockout punches against the silly American company that snubbed them. While D&D was too full of hubris and copyright trolling, one of their major early competitors, Tunnels and Trolls, was eager to seize the opportunity. Group SNE.
The reason part of the thing that helped Tunnels and Trolls was twofold. One, it was a D6 based game, and always has been. Two, it was a lot easier to. It's always been a lot easier to pick up and play. It is a graduate of the UK of the UK scene, which had a major footprint with the stuff that Livingstone was doing at the time, and also the fact that, remember, a lot of D&D support in Japan took a long ass time.
Was given a license to translate and publish TNT in Japan, and they soon adopted it as their system of choice for their games and replays. However, SNE would never again tie their brand so heavily to someone else's product. They changed systems frequently, until eventually creating their own, Sword World, in 1989, which utterly shattered the competition and shut D&D out of the market. Yanagi
saying it shut it out of the market is not true, because D&D was still supported in Japan through the relationship with TSR all the way up until TSR's bankruptcy.
Cites that this success was for more reasons than just the popularity of Lodos War, however. There was also a big price difference. TSR was really cautious with the Japanese market. Their print runs were all small, and therefore the copies were expensive. Meanwhile, SNE was leveraging their connections in the publishing industry. Connections that could clearly see with their own eyes that the public was starving for this new Western high fantasy thing, and they would just spam out copies of Sword World. The public could get copies of this game for less than 15% the cost of a D&D book. Porting it over to modern US dollars, Sword World cost about $5. D&D was selling for like 41. They ended up selling 500,000 copies of Sword World, compared to an estimated 200,000 copies of D&D. And the thing with tabletop role-playing games is the communities behave a little bit like MMO communities. The first mega hit gets to keep all of the audience. Why is it exactly that no MMO can kill World of Warcraft? Well, it's simple. All of the MMO players are already playing World of Warcraft.
You might have been able to argue that in 2008, in the year of our Lord 2026, you can't really say that, because right now World of Warcraft is a zombie.
Well, that's mostly because Blizzard decided to off themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't we have a conversation just earlier today about how we hate the insert X killer here?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The reason now, despite its flaws that have been well documented, the reason games like Warframe and Final Fantasy XIV have taken a large amount of the audience that probably would have done World of Warcraft in the past is due to them, instead of trying to chase just being World of Warcraft, the approach was, we're going to do our own thing and gradually build. And that would have, same thing with like Path of Exile, and that would eventually result in being big enough to host their own conventions. Whether it be FanFest, whether it be TennoCon, even Path of Exile has done its own conventions. Oh. Now, granted, having a low barrier to initial entry certainly helps, but it's a case of never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
You can't move a gaming community. Hard fact. So
Not true. It has happened. When Games Workshop pulled their bullshit, there were a bunch of people who jumped ship over to BattleTech and never looked back.
Yeah, some of them went to BattleTech, some of them went to Infinity.
Some of them had to learn the hard way that they needed to adapt. Especially
yes, he told me that story.
So while Sword World was making a lot less per book compared to what D&D was making, they succeeded at becoming the foundational game. D&D would fail time and time again to beat Lodos War, but it was not meant to be. And then it got even worse for D&D, because Lodos War then became an anime in 1990. Arguably the most influential fantasy anime of all time. Also, it looks like this. What the hell? How does it look like this? Why doesn't all D&D look like
Somewhat.
this? What's
I think he's overlooked with this whole, why does it look like this? This was 1990. We were still in the OVA bubble.
He may have been say having it in context of the time.
It's a very simple answer, though. Then again, as I've kind of established, he focuses more on being an entertainer.
He's
The
entertaining
detriment.
things. He rather entertains than actually look into whatever he's covering.
happened here? Forget it. D&D has lost the war for the Japanese market, repeatedly failing to partner with local hobbyists who would have been more than happy to play ball. Like I said, D&D kind of has this folk practice tendency.
If I'm being honest, I'm not entirely sure, even if they did work with local hobbyists more, that it would have helped. The big elephant in the room is the fact that D&D has a lot of the DNA of wargaming. And that never took off in Japan. So unless they made a heavily modified version specifically for that end, that wouldn't have worked. And that's part of the reason Tunnels and Trolls was able to work as well, because it doesn't have that. TNT plays pretty loose when it comes to the grid question.
And then the actual company that owns D&D is always insistent on coming in and playing the bad guy. They attempted a relaunch in 1994, even making a pair of Japanese D&D arcade games by Capcom. And they were pretty clearly ripping off Lodos War when they did so.
I really hate when people use the term Loda, when people use the term ripoff. Capcom already had a strong background with doing beat 'em ups for the arcades at that point, and I'd say if there was anything that's that there was certainly some Lodos inspiration, I will say, but I'd hesitate to call ripoff. And I'd say if anything, you probably had some people taking notes from Golden Axe. Minus the goddamn gnomes. I fucking hate those gnomes.
Gnomes are the best part.
Fuck off.
Remind me to dress up the Tonberry in a gnome costume just to troll you.
Now, those games were actually amazing, and I've got a great video on them. But despite the quality of those video games, Lodos and Sword World won the battle. D&D remains a pop culture force in Japan, but the company has never managed to make it a popular product over there. The Japanese version of the D&D 5th edition Player's Handbook has sold as few as 10,000 copies, despite trying another marketing push recently. Sword World defeated D&D in Japan. Yet, it didn't end up strangling the market in the same way that D&D did elsewhere in the world. The Japanese tabletop role-playing industry is so much more multipolar than it is out here in the West. The industry is dominated by a bunch of mid-sized systems, rather than one mega company that eclipses everyone. And D&D still can't break into this market, because
There are three companies that I'd say have the biggest lion's share, and a lot of indies. In that regard, there's some parallels I can make between the tabletop scene in Japan, from what I understand, and the professional wrestling scene. That is Group SNE, Fear, and Arclight. Those are the three names that come up the most. I'd say I know some people really hate Fear for different reasons. They're fine. And I haven't had enough of a sample size with Arclight to really say on them.
they're not really equipped to beat other systems as peers. They run their games as though they're already the hegemony. When they find
I think there's a fundamental problem he has with his understanding with this idea that there's this need to beat each other as if one has to be this dominant entry. Also, Hydra, you're talking to yourself.
Sorry.
But this idea of, oh, there can only be one, like this is Highlander or some shit, I think is a fundamental misunderstanding on his part.
It's a common misunderstanding with a lot of people. Sometimes it's better off. It's better off for people just to be like, hey, I don't need to be the thing in an industry. I could just be a thing, and we can just coast being one of the things instead of trying to be the thing.
Mm-hmm. This is why I've said that I don't. I'll probably end up repeating this later on, but I don't think William SRD is equipped to cover anything but D&D. Mentally speaking.
themselves on equal footing in places like Japan, it turns out they just can't quite hack it. Right now, Japan appears to be on a bit of a Call of Cthulhu kick.
This has been a thing for years. What the fuck are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
With it
When was
reportedly
the
being the
original
most
video?
popular system due to some popular
first
actual
time.
play streams. We might see Japanese cultural exports
We
in a
continue
year
to be a
or
call
three
of Chilhu kick.
Like he's making it sound like this
Dude.
is a new thing. This is things are
This has been like a thing for 15 years. What is he on?
And Call of Cthulhu is great. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I have noticed that particular momentum with Call of Cthulhu has started to bleed over into some of the other systems in the basic role-playing family. Because right around that time, I started having back and forth with some people who were running Earth Dawn campaigns, which isn't in that same family, but not far off, and Dragonbane as well, which is in that family. Dragonbane's fucking great, but it also doesn't hurt that I think there's also been pushes for doing more stuff with RuneQuest in Japan, which that'd be a fun little full circle thing. And I guarantee I would do a better job explaining RuneQuest than he would. Not that that's hard.
A turn for the Lovecraftian as the game's influence spreads. I, for one, am incredibly excited to watch Is It Wrong to Pick Up Girls in a Cyclopean Underwater Labyrinth while my eyes melt from the horrors that they were never meant to see when it inevitably comes out on Crunchyroll.
Is that supposed to be a joke?
It's not a very good one, is it?
No.
So, I think was it before the show or in the very beginning? Whenever I said William isn't very good at monotone joke, like telling jokes in a monotone tone.
In charisma is his dump stat.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like this being the second video of his that I've watched. It's like, does he have a stat that isn't a dump stat?
He chose to put levels in the expert class in
The
3rd
saddest
edition.
part is me, the fucking TTS speaking person. Has more humor. And can pull off humor.
Yeah.
Yep,
To-
that is true.
Despite sounding like I am perpetually disinterested in anything that is going on.
Megamind was right when he said it's all about presentation.
But the history of how Lodos War beat D&D is only one part of the story of this franchise.
This has been bugging me for a little bit, but I find it very amusing that if he's talking about Lodos and tabletop, he's using the wrong damn book.
I just before we go again, I gotta point out that those wings that are pretending to be ears on that elf is just driving me insane.
That's
Not to mention, like, let's be frank, he's been ragging on and on about Lodos, but there's more to Sword World than just fucking Lodos.
this cover is from the more recent Lodos TTRPG that was an anniversary project.
Looks good.
Yeah, it does look really good.
It does look interesting, but the Lodos TTRPG that everyone knew for the longest time is not this. The version that everyone would be more familiar with for the longest time that we had covered on the channel in the past is the Lodos Companion from 1989, which also had a couple articles translated for a Cristania run, and has had its own unique replays on both ends. This was the version in 2018, which the two of them are not compatible at all. And hell, even though both of them use a percentile system that's adjacent to basic role playing, neither of them are compatible with BRP in any edition.
Because, there's a story in Lodos War, obviously. We shall cover both the beginning and the end of this franchise. That is to say, we're covering the first arc of the anime, as well as the recent video game that serves as the capstone of the old story. While Lodos War is a full franchise in Japan, in the West, Lodos War is, let's be real, it's a classic 13-episode anime OVA.
So we're just not going to mention Chronicles of the Heroic Knight, or Legend of Cristania, or fucking Rune Soldier.
Nope.
Amateur.
I'm only going to cover the first arc,
expect?
the Grey Witch arc, which goes all the way up to episode 8. But first...
Something I need to mention. Both of the Lodos anime that we got, those only cover, like, the second and third book. The Grey Witch was never adapted into the OVA. I believe the original OVA and the 26 episode anime are more focused on the demon of the fire demon arc. And made some changes that would eventually get readapted into things like Pirates. Pirates was never in the original novels. But Mizuno liked the character, so he added her into novels and into the canon of Lodos. But like there are. And obvious now, Cristania not being covered, that's fine. That's technically a separate area. But I have to correct myself. The first 8 episodes are based on the Grey Witch. Barely. Carla barely shows up in it. And
Fuck Carla.
And later on, it's adapting the Demon Dragon of Fire Dragon Mountain books. Whereas Chronicles of the Heroic Knight is based on the Holy Knight of Lodos and the King's Holy War loosely. With some overlapping of Fire Dragon Mountain. The point is, this was one of those adaptations where where there was a lot of mix match and cherry picking going about instead of a more direct adaptation like you would see nowadays. Like if someone did a Lodos animation project now, I guarantee it would try to be a straight adaptation of the Grey Witch and then go further with future novels. I say that because that's exactly what we got with that quote-unquote remake of Sorceress Stabber Orphan, which is much closer to the light novels than the anime that we got by AIC in '95. I have a soft spot for Orphan because it was the first anime that I physically bought, but that's a whole other story.
It's a new year, and I owe you guys a lot, because you have supported me a lot through the years. Listen, 2 years in a row, my top performing video of the year, first or second by YouTube. First, by YouTube age-restricting Wraith the Oblivion just as it was starting to actually go viral, and then Kadokawa did the
I'm skipping that, because it doesn't...
War year when it was beginning.
So... when it comes to the rest, that is material that we don't need to get into because everything after this is just covering Lodos. Nothing on Sword World. Which does make me wonder if the material on Fellows was hidden in here that he just conveniently skipped. Because the rest of it isn't covering that at all. But I think we've seen enough.
Please make it end. Please make it end.
I am putting my foot down.
Yeah, I don't think I can take much more of this.
But okay, let's answer the obvious question. Is this better or Sig? A. Is this better or worse than when he covered Anima?
Worse.
Well, at least for Anima, he was trying to cover it. For this, it's just like, oh hey, I wanted to make a video on Lodos, but then at some point he's like, oh hey, let's talk about Sword World a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he hasn't mentioned a damn thing about Lodos outside some small little nuggets of history, which are small truths.
Well, it looks like from this point on, he talks about the different animes, OVAs, and then one of the games toward the end.
Yeah, the Deedlit and Wonder Labyrinth game. There have been other Lodos games. In fact, that brings up another question. If he's covering those, why the fuck is he skipping out on the Dreamcast game?
Because William, that's why. And let's be frank, is this even worse than Anima? My vote is a flat yes because, let's be frank, we're not even 20 minutes in and we're just about ready to rage quit.
Mm-hmm. But when it comes to this, I think just with these 2 videos alone, that is enough to and I'm gonna put the playlist back on. That's enough to really make a coda of sorts on William SRD's ability to cover things outside of D&D. I know that he's also done videos on Cyberpunk and Shadowrun. I will never be showing those because Buddha may close his eyes on you 3 times, but I'm not Buddha. But I would say that a fundamental flaw with his ability to convey information is, if you want to be a entertainer, that's one thing. But if you're trying to inform people on a thing, that's not something you can half-ass in the name of entertainment. Am I saying you need to go full documentary style? No, but you need to make sure your ducks are in a row. And I don't think he's capable of doing that with things outside of D&D.
I don't think he even has ducks to begin with.
Oh.
This makes me want to go and do a lore series on EVE Online, just to prove that you can be both informative and funny.
And hell, if you want an excellent case in point of how you, I could bring up Bricky, it's clearly who he wants to be. But I suppose another big example of the case that you can be informative and funny is Pancreas No Work.
For me, it's Majular.
Mm-hmm. You know,
he's done a great Ultima retrospective.
I'm pretty sure he did a better job of that than Noah did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm more to that lean towards Pancreas No Work and Sven with his Battletech lore recaps.
And
chock full of content.
With Battletech, obviously Tex has done really good on that front, but also guys like Big Red 40K and Sven. The most informative end of that is Sven Vanderbeek. And he has gone into complete detail, going all the way back to the earliest days of that setting. He's currently in the I think the last major thing he did was the Succession Wars. But when I say in depth, I mean he's going year by year. But I know one could argue, who are you to talk about this kind of thing? You're just a small fry. A small fry that cares about making sure that these things are presented as cleanly as possible, so that people can make the most informed decisions about whether or not they're going to spend their time or money on it. It's no different than when I would get on Game Informer when I was very young for the shit reviews that they were doing. I know some are like, aren't you supposed to be shitting on IGN with that? It's like, Game Informer crawled so IGN could walk when it came to being my whipping boy for bad reviews. And subsequently GameSpot. But and maybe you came to the same conclusion, but it definitely seems like that William has an idea in his head about what he's going to build everything around. That idea being a paragraph's worth of information, and the rest is trying to reinforce that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you did say that he has something of a narrative, but
I mean, depending on what you're covering, that may not be a bad way to do it. It's just from the anima, like anima video that we already covered, and this one, like he's going about it the wrong way. Like he much rather go and preach than like actually trying to make good points.
What do you mean by that? I think I know what you mean, but let me see if I'm on the same page.
It's had it on the tip of my tongue that I lost it. Fuck.
Mm-hmm. Ah.
Yeah, I just can't remember it now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just watching. Sorry, I'm watching my work chat slowly blow up.
No worries. But when it comes to, I think when it comes to it, like I said, he had a. The narrative was Lodos beat D&D. And everything, and he built everything around that. And the problem is that's not the way things actually worked. If he had done this video a decade ago, I might have been able to give a little bit of slack because there was so little info we had. I can't say that
came
now.
with a bias. He came in making this video with a bias, and now it's been him in the ass.
Yeah. And I know inevitably somebody could say, didn't you go into Fabula Ultima with a bias? Actually, no. I went into Fabula Ultima with the perspective of everyone who's covering this has a limited sample size of RPGs that are taking inspiration from console RPGs. I don't, and I was using that perspective of having that experience as my base. And because of that, I ended up finding it wanting for multiple reasons. But I don't go in with a bias. In fact, I've called people out for that. But as a bit of a coda, I usually don't do the apology tour, but I want to note that I do apologize for putting everyone, whether they're watching the stream or the people who are in the screen share with me, for subjecting you to that. As a general rule, I do not like subjecting people to bad media that I know is bad. Will I go through bad media by myself? Yeah. But in that case, the only one who's dealing with the pain is me. I'd rather that than like I'm not gonna have anybody watch a Black Wave movie for a stream because, well, first off, we couldn't show that shit, and second off, I'm not into putting people through that kind of torture.
And that's a rather kind of you to say, Mildred.
Oh.
But we all decided to stick around to the end, even knowing this was going to be a shit show.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got your back, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, with that said, we'll be back here next week for Alchemist Works. Now, I will admit when we go between 2.0 and 2.5, there will be some things that overlap. But it will be there will be a purpose, and it will be interesting to see what carried over and what didn't. As far as I know, you mentioned this earlier, Maki, but if I had to guess as to why 2.5 has gotten significantly more popular than 2.0 was, I think and keep in mind, I'm outside looking in, but I think a lot of it is 2.5 has a more unified design than 2.0 did. I also think that
a lot of it relates to universal aesthetics, yeah.
Mm-hmm. 2.5 doubled down on the on the things that make the setting unique. The major conflict in Terrastier is the human barbarous thing, whereas Alflame has the human problem, the barbarous problem. Oh yeah, and the shallow abysses.
Hello, Arya.
Also, the developers of the game kind of focused more on the experience they wanted to deliver with the entire world.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of 2.0 was them taking the feedback from the OG era and refining off of that. But I think it was just going to happen just because the snowball was rolling down the hill. When we get to Alchemist Works next week, we will be going through it in some degree of detail, but obviously there will be stuff that we skim. If only because covering books of that size in one session is going to be a challenge. I have thought of giving coverage to some of the other games that use the 2d6 setup. But if I do that, the priority ones are going to be Dragon Half and Scrapped Princess. And honestly, with Dragon Half, there's not going to be a whole lot I'd be able to say because Dragon Half is a shitpost.
And it's great.
I mean, yeah, the anime was also a shitpost, so of course the game is.
Sure, it was a shitpost, but it was an entertaining shitpost.
Yes.
I'd be more likely to cover Scrapped Princess if only because, first off, it's an excuse for me to play Little Wing by Jam Project, and I love Jam Project. But also, it demonstrates how each entry that is using that 2d6 system is its own beast. Scrapped Princess and Sword World have very little in common. But when it comes to next week, I think we will cover it in we'll cover it on a few chapters, and if there's stuff that ends up being repeated from the core books, that stuff we can obviously skip because we already covered the core books in the two-parter. And I think it'll be interesting to look at it because the alchemist concept in Sword World is significantly different than any other in any fantasy RPG that we see. But there will be some stuff that's revisited that we're going to be skipping because I want to focus on the unique entries in each book. So keep an eye out for that in about a week's time, and there's going to be a few other things I've got planned throughout the week. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, may your adventures be grand and your treasures myriad. Stay frosty.
See you on the trail.
Catch y'all later.